My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 78 years old. I sold the farm my father built. I did it 32 years ago, and I still think about it most mornings when I wake up. Not in a loud way, just there, like something I left behind in a room I can't go back into. I grew up on that land, 214 acres in southern Illinois. My father bought it in 1947 with money he saved working the railroads and a loan he paid off over 17 years. He used to say the land was the only thing that couldn't be taken from you if you took care of it. He died in 1984, heart attack in the barn. I found him near the tractor, still wearing his gloves. I was 38, married, 2 kids. I'd been working in town as an accountant for almost 15 years by then. I'd come out to help on weekends, but I hadn't farmed full-time since I was 19. After the funeral, my mother asked me what I was going to do with the place. I told her I'd figure it out, but I already knew.
I didn't grow up wanting to leave. I loved that farm when I was a boy. I knew every fence line, every low spot in the field that would flood in spring, where the best blackberries grew along the back road. My father would wake me before dawn and we'd walk out together. He didn't talk much, but he'd point things out. A hawk, new growth, tracks in the mud. He taught me how to read the sky, how to know when a storm was coming just by the way the air felt. I thought I'd do that forever. But when I got to high school, I started noticing how tired he looked, how his hands were always cracked and stiff, how we'd have a good year and then 2 bad ones, and my mother would go quiet at the dinner table, and I'd know we were behind on something. I saw other kids leave for college. I saw them come back in clean clothes, talking about jobs with benefits and weekends off. And I started thinking maybe there was a smarter way to live.
I went to school for accounting. I was good with numbers. It made sense. I got a job at a firm in town, met Linda, got married, bought a house with a mortgage that felt huge but manageable. My father never said anything about it. He just kept farming. I'd go out on Saturdays and help with whatever needed doing. He'd nod, hand me a wrench or a rake, and we'd work side by side like we always had. But I could feel it, the space between us. Not anger, just distance, like I'd chosen a language he didn't speak. When he died, I inherited the farm. My mother moved into town with us. She didn't want to stay out there alone. For a while, I tried to keep it going. I'd drive after work. On weekends, I hired a man named Earl to help. But he was getting old too, and it wasn't the same. The bills kept coming. Property taxes, equipment repairs, seed, fertilizer. And I had my own bills, my own job, my own life. Linda never said it directly, but I could tell she didn't understand why I was holding on. "It's just land, Robert," she said once, gently, like she was trying to help me see reason. And maybe that's when I started to believe her. I started thinking about it more after Linda passed. She died 4 years ago, cancer. It was fast. And when she was gone, the house felt too big, too quiet. I'd sit in the living room and realize I didn't know what I was doing there. I'd paid off the mortgage years ago. The kids were grown. I didn't need the space. And I started wondering what I'd been working for. Not in a bitter way, just wondering. I drove out to where the farm used to be about 6 months ago. I hadn't been back in over 20 years. It's a subdivision now. Neat little houses with vinyl siding and two-car garages, streets named things like Harvest Lane and Meadowbrook Drive. I parked on the side of the road and just sat there. I tried to picture where the barn had been, where the house stood, the field where my father taught me to drive the tractor when I was 12. But I couldn't. It was all gone. And I realized something sitting there. I didn't sell the farm because I needed the money. I sold it because I was afraid. I was afraid of failing, afraid of working that hard and still losing everything, the way my father almost did a dozen times, afraid of being tired and broke and stuck. I thought leaving meant I was smarter, that I'd figured out something he hadn't. But he hadn't missed anything. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't farming because he didn't know any better. He was farming because it was his. Because every morning he woke up and walked out onto something he'd built with his own hands. Because it wasn't just land, it was the life he chose. And I traded that for safety, for a paycheck, for a house I didn't need, for a version of success that someone else defined. I don't hate the life I lived. I had a good marriage, good kids. I wasn't unhappy. But I think about my father sometimes, how he'd wake up before the sun and walk out into the fields, how he'd come in at night with dirt on his boots and sit down to dinner and not say much, but you could tell he was settled. He knew where he belonged. And I spent 50 years trying to prove I was smarter than that. But I wasn't smarter. I was just scared.
I don't know what I thought I was building. A career, I guess. Security. A life my kids wouldn't have to worry about. And maybe I gave them that. But I also showed them that the things your parents build don't matter. That you can walk away from what someone spent their whole life creating and call it progress. My son works in Denver. He's a software engineer. Makes good money. We talk on the phone every few weeks. He's busy, I understand. But sometimes I wonder if he knows anything about where he comes from. If he knows his grandfather bought 200 acres with borrowed money and made it work. If he knows what that means. I don't think I ever told him. I've been going through old boxes lately. Things my mother kept. Things I didn't throw away when she died. I found a photograph last week. It's my father, maybe 40 years old, standing in front of the barn. He's looking at the camera, but not smiling, just there. Behind him, you can see the fields, the fence line, the sky. I stared at that picture for a long time, and I realized I don't have anything like that. No place I can point to and say, I built that. No land, no barn, no fields, just years. Years of sitting in an office, years of mortgages and tax returns and weekends I can't remember. I made money, I was responsible, but I didn't build anything. I'm not saying everyone should farm. I'm not even saying I should have. But I think I should have asked myself what I actually wanted. Not what made sense, not what other people were doing.